If you are waking up 2, 3, or 4 times every night to use the bathroom, I want you to stop blaming your bladder. Because in the vast majority of cases, your bladder is not the problem at all. Something else is happening inside your body, and it begins several hours before you ever close your eyes. Most people never discover this. They adjust, they accept it, and they spend years of their lives sleeping in fragments. I am Dr. Hiroshi Nakamura. I have practiced internal medicine and geriatric health for more than 25 years, and I have sat with hundreds of patients over the age of 50 who described exactly what you may be experiencing right now: the interrupted sleep, the exhaustion that coffee cannot fix, the resignation, and in nearly every case, we traced it back to something simple, something they were doing in the evening and had never once connected to their nights. What most people do not realize is that this is not an age problem, it is a pattern problem, and the pattern almost always contains a trigger. Sometimes it is something they are drinking. Sometimes it is something they are eating. Sometimes it is a condition quietly operating in the background. Today, I want to walk you through the most common evening habits that cause this, explain exactly what is happening inside your body, and give you something practical to take with you when this is over. 1. The late evening liquid that most people consider harmless. Most people instinctively stop drinking water in the evening to avoid waking up at night. And then they reach for something else. A cup of tea, a glass of wine, a small soda, something to unwind with. What is actually happening in the body depends entirely on what that drink contains. Alcohol is the most deceptive of all. Many people tell me that a small drink before bed helps them fall asleep, and in a narrow technical sense, they are correct. Alcohol does slow the central nervous system. It shortens the time it takes to fall asleep. But what it does next is the part nobody mentions. Alcohol directly suppresses a hormone called antidiuretic hormone. This hormone is produced by the brain during sleep, and its specific function is to signal the kidneys to slow down, to concentrate the urine, to produce less volume, to let the body rest. It is the reason a healthy person can sleep 7 or 8 hours without ever needing to get up. When alcohol is present, that signal does not go out. The kidneys receive no instruction to slow down. They continue working at full capacity through the night, and the bladder feels as it would during waking hours. Think of it this way. Your kidneys are a factory that runs on 2 shifts. The daytime shift runs at full speed. The night shift is supposed to run in economy mode. Alcohol cancels the night shift entirely. The factory runs at full capacity while you are trying to sleep. The result is that you fall asleep with ease, and then 2 or 3 hours later, you wake up with an urgent, full bladder, and the sleep you return to is shallow and fragmented for the rest of the night. Many people do not connect those 2 events because the drink happened hours before. But the timing is not a coincidence. It is a direct physiological consequence. The same mechanism is affected, to a lesser degree, by caffeine. Tea in the evening, whether green or black or certain herbal blends, contains enough stimulant compounds to keep the kidneys working more actively than they should. Caffeine is a diuretic. It blocks certain reabsorption channels in the kidney. Water that would otherwise be reclaimed passes straight through. People who drink tea at 9 or 10 in the evening and then wonder why they are up at 2 in the morning are, without knowing it, answering their own question. 2. The food on your dinner plate that is filling your bladder overnight. Stay with me for a moment because this next part surprises almost everyone. Sodium, meaning salt, does something in the evening that very few people ever think about. When you eat a meal with significant salt content, whether it comes from a shaker or from processed food, your body immediately begins working to dilute it. Sodium in the bloodstream triggers a response. The body holds water, fluid shifts, pressure rises slightly, and in the short term you may not urinate more. In fact, you may urinate less in the early evening because the body is retaining water to manage the sodium load. But several hours later, typically in the middle of the night, your kidneys begin the work of clearing that sodium out, and sodium pulls water with it. To eliminate 1 unit of excess sodium, the kidneys must move a substantial volume of fluid. You wake up not because you drank too much before bed. You wake up because of what you had for dinner 4 hours earlier. This is particularly relevant for people who eat cheese, cured meats, sausages, packaged bread, or condiments in the evening. These foods contain sodium in quantities that most people never see because it is masked by fat and flavor. A modest portion of hard cheese can carry as much sodium as a large bag of salted snacks. You do not taste it, but your kidneys will find it in the middle of the night. Similarly, simple carbohydrates in the evening, sweet drinks, fruit, biscuits, anything that causes a rapid rise in blood sugar trigger a hormonal response that initially retains fluid and then, 2 to 3 hours later, switches into active excretion. In people with any degree of insulin resistance, and this is more common after 40 than most people realize, elevated blood sugar itself pulls water into the urine. A small piece of fruit before bed. A glass of sweet tea. These can be enough to disturb the entire night. 3. The condition that is working in the background without a single obvious symptom. I want you to pay attention here, because this is the part most people miss completely. There is a condition called obstructive sleep apnea, in which the airway partially collapses during sleep and breathing stops repeatedly through the night. Sometimes for 10 seconds, sometimes for 30. In more severe cases, this happens hundreds of times before morning. Each time breathing stops, oxygen in the blood drops. The brain detects an emergency and floods the body with stress hormones. The heart rate spikes. Blood pressure rises, and then breathing resumes. This cycle repeats over and over while the person believes they are simply a poor sleeper. What most people do not know is that this repeated oxygen drop directly disrupts antidiuretic hormone production. Every time the body perceives a physiological crisis, it overrides the night shift instruction. The kidneys are pulled back into active mode. Fluid is processed, the bladder fills, and the person wakes up, often believing they woke because of the urge to urinate, when in fact the urge followed the breathing event. The bladder is responding to what the lungs already did. If you snore, if you wake up tired no matter how long you sleep, if your blood pressure is difficult to manage despite medication, this possibility deserves a conversation with your doctor. Sleep apnea is diagnosed through a sleep study. It is significantly underdiagnosed in adults over 50, and treating it, in many cases, resolves the nighttime urination almost entirely without a single change to diet or fluid intake. 4. The fluid you cannot see. The one accumulating in your legs. I remember a patient named Kenji, 68 years old, a retired civil engineer, precise and methodical. He came to me with a thick file of his own records. He had stopped drinking any fluids after 5 in the afternoon. His mouth was dry every evening. He went to bed genuinely thirsty, and he still woke up 3 to 4 times every night, releasing large volumes of urine. He could not understand where it was coming from. When I asked him about his legs, he paused. He mentioned that by evening, his socks left a faint indentation in his skin, that the elastic seemed tighter at the end of the day than in the morning. That detail told me most of what I needed to know. During the day, gravity pulls fluid downward into the tissues of the lower legs. In a younger body with strong, elastic veins and healthy valves, this fluid is actively pumped back upward. In an aging body, particularly one that spent significant hours seated, the valves weaken and the fluid pools, not dramatically, not visibly in most cases, but measurably. Up to 1.5 liters of water can accumulate in the soft tissue of the legs over the course of a day without producing obvious swelling. Then, when you lie down, gravity no longer holds it there. The fluid redistributes. It re-enters the bloodstream. The heart detects an increase in volume and releases a hormone that signals the kidneys to eliminate the excess immediately. Within 30 to 60 minutes of lying down, the bladder is full, and the cycle continues until morning as the legs continue releasing what they stored during the day. Kenji was not producing that urine from what he drank in the evening. He was producing it from what had accumulated in his legs over 12 hours of sitting. Restricting fluids after 5 in the afternoon had done nothing because the source had nothing to do with his drinking. The practical intervention is simple in principle. Elevate your legs for 15 to 20 minutes before bed, ideally 1 to 2 hours before lying down. A supported position with your heels above the level of your heart allows gravity to drain the legs while you are still awake. Your kidneys do the work before you sleep, not during. Many patients find this produces a noticeable difference within the first week. If any of what I have described sounds familiar to your own evenings, I would like you to write yes in the comments. It helps me understand who is watching and where to direct the next conversation. 5. A note on blood sugar and the sign that often goes unnoticed. Elevated blood sugar, whether from established diabetes or from the earlier, quieter stage called prediabetes, acts as what is known as an osmotic diuretic. Sugar in the bloodstream draws water out of tissues and into the urine. The more sugar circulates, the more water follows it. People with uncontrolled or undiagnosed blood sugar often drink more because they are constantly thirsty and urinate more because their body is trying to clear the excess glucose. This pattern, increased thirst, combined with frequent urination, is one of the earliest indicators of blood sugar dysregulation, and it is often present for months or years before anyone makes the connection. If you are waking up frequently, consuming more fluids than you used to, and feeling tired despite adequate sleep, blood sugar deserves attention. A simple fasting blood glucose test is all it takes to begin answering that question. What I want you to do differently beginning tonight: start with one thing: remove alcohol from the evening entirely, not as a permanent judgment, but as a 2-week experiment. Observe what changes. If your nights improve, you have your answer. Next, look at what you eat for dinner. Remove cured meats, hard cheeses, and any packaged food with sodium listed prominently on the label. Replace them with food that does not carry a hidden salt load. Fresh protein, vegetables, simple preparation. If your legs carry visible indentations from socks by the end of the day, begin elevating them in the evening before sleep. 15 minutes is enough. You're asking gravity to do the work before your body lies down. And if you snore, if you wake feeling unrested despite a full night in bed, speak to your doctor about a sleep study. This is not a minor quality of life concern. Untreated sleep apnea carries real cardiovascular consequences over time, and its relationship to nighttime urination is direct and well established. What I want to leave you with is this: the body does not disrupt your sleep without a reason. Every time you wake to that familiar signal in the night, something generated it. A drink that suppressed a hormone, a meal that sent sodium into the bloodstream, a fluid that redistributed from your legs, a breathing pause that triggered a cascade. These are not random, they are traceable, and in most cases, they are changeable. You are not simply aging, you are responding to patterns that have accumulated over years of evenings, and patterns can be changed. The body remains responsive at any age when you give it the right conditions. I have seen this in patients in their 70s and 80s who made modest changes and slept through the night for the first time in years. Not because of medication, because something in their evening was finally adjusted. If this has been useful to you, subscribe for more conversations like this one. I publish regularly for adults over 50 who want honest, careful guidance rather than quick reassurance. And if there is a symptom or habit you would like me to address in a future video, leave it in the comments. I read them, and they shape what comes next.
Racing my own thoughts into the silence, seeking the guidance I